Hello, this is Sam from ZH Healthcare, and today I'm going to take you through a session on a repeat session on meaningful use stage 2 and the uses of it, how we are going to achieve it in our system. So I'm going to train you in on 4 different things, or I'm going to talk about 4 different things today. The first thing is meaningful use stage 2. What are the changes compared to what was initially proposed, and what the changes has come after October 22nd, and just give you a brief introduction on how the meaningful use stage 2 has been reduced. The number of criteria has been reduced comparatively from what was initially proposed. That is the first thing. Secondly, I'm going to show you how these criteria that are presently there can be met in the BlueEHS using the BlueEHS, how you can meet all these criteria, how you can meet the numerator and the denominator using the BlueEHS. Thirdly, I'm going to take you through the dashboard, which is going to give you an evaluation of how you are doing on these measures. I'll just show you the dashboard screen and how you can view that. Fourthly, I'm going to give you a slide just on clinical quality measures. That's where I'm going to end this session. So these are the 4 things that is going to be covered. So first of all, let me start off with the introductory one, where I'm going to tell you what are the changes that came in stage 2 since October 22nd onwards. Now, this is a document which gives you a good look into what were the changes. In meaningful use stage 2, which was initially proposed, there were 23 measures, 17 of which were core measures and 6 were menu measures. Out of the 17 core measures, each provider would have to mandatorily meet all the 17 core measures. Now, and out of the 6 menu measures, they had to meet at least 3 menu measures. So basically, out of the 23 available, you have to do 17 core plus 3 menu. So every provider has to meet 20 measures to take care of meaningful use stage 2. Now, on October 22nd, 2015, CMS has brought a change onto that, whereby we do not have to do those 20. They have reduced the core measures and the menu measures. Everything has been condensed into a set of 10 measures, 10 objectives, all of which has to be met by a provider. Now, one thing I want to mention here, whether you are in meaningful use stage 1 at this moment or in stage 2 at this moment, it is for both, they have reduced it to 10 main objectives. Only thing is, for stage 1, for some of these 10 objectives, the cutoff percentage might be lower, or the number of things to be done on a particular criteria might be lower as far as stage 1 is concerned. But everybody has just 10 objectives, which are 10 objectives to do from. And that is what I'm going to explain one by one. What are the 10 objectives and how we are going to meet that in BlueEHS. So let me go on to the 10 objectives, and how we are going to meet that in BlueEHS. So this is, objectives and measures for 2015 through 2017 for modified stage 2. Now it is called modified stage 2 because of the modification that came on October 22nd. The first thing is, out of the 10 objective is protect patient health information. So conduct or review a security analysis in accordance with the requirements of, basically, let me give you a gist of this. There are 2 sides to this security analysis. As a provider, you need to do a security analysis within your practice using a consultant as to how the security measures are set up, and that has to be done within your practice. And as far as the BlueEHS is concerned, there are security measures that are being done on our end as far as the BlueEHS is concerned, as we are hosting the website and things like that. So from our end, we have taken care of certain security measures, but for a client of the BlueEHS, they also do have to take care of certain security measures. Now, to get the details regarding how to conduct the security measures, you can always get a link of that on the BlueEHS website. It is not the BlueEHS website, I mean the CMS website. You can Google it and find a link of CMS to get the details regarding what and how the security measures have to be analyzed at the provider's end. We have taken care of what needs to be done in the BlueEHS end. Secondly, the second objective is the clinical decision support objective. As far as the clinical decision support objective is concerned, there are two measures that are associated with it. The first one is implement 5 clinical decision support interventions related to 4 or more clinical quality measures at any related point at a relevant point in patient care for this entire EHR reporting period. Basically, this is also something that is automatically taken care of in the BlueEHS. We have created decision support rules within the system. So there are alerts that will come here and there in the demographic screen, sometime in the patient screen, for certain clinical decisions, like if it's a diabetes patient, if a patient is over 3 years and less than 70 years, he needs to have an alert for a diabetes check that needs to be done. So these are alerts that come up automatically in the system. You do not have to really worry about how you're going to meet it. One thing that is that is specified here is there need to be 5 clinical decision support. We have implemented already around 9 clinical decision support in the system, so that is okay. But they have to be 4 of those clinical decision support rules have to be related to certain CQMs that you as a provider choose to do in the system, or choose to have do as a part of meaningful use. Meaningful use also has a set of clinical quality measures that needs to be achieved. So how you are doing these CQMs is another question that you need. Out of those CQMs that you do, these decision support rule has to be based on some of those CQMs. So I will come back to this measure at a later point of time after explaining what CQMs is and how you are going to choose that, and how we are going to make CQMs related to clinical decision support rules based on the CQMs. I just wanted to show you the BlueEHS screen to show you where we have implemented the clinical decision support. So I'm just going into the BlueEHS screen for a moment. So here is a BlueEHS screen. So if you go into the BlueEHS screen, if you go into the main menu here, you have something called as the CDR engine. Now, CDR engine is where we have created these clinical decision support rules. Now, if you look at the CDR engine, there are around 17 CDR clinical decision support rules that we have already created within the system based on various things like cancer screening, mammogram, cancer screening for prostate cancer screening, diabetes eye exam, diabetes foot exam. As far as a provider is concerned, they need only 5. We have around 17 that are active in the system on certain, and so it should not be a problem to meet 5, except for that criteria where, for that one condition where I mentioned that it need to be related to 4 CQMs that you choose to do. We'll look at it at a later point of time. Now, going back to our document. So I'll talk about this clinical decision support rule at a later point of time. Now, as far as the second measure is concerned, the EP has enabled and implemented the functionality of for drug-to-drug and drug allergy interaction checks for the entire reporting period. Now, as far as this one is concerned, as long as a provider is using the e-prescription module, this one is automatically enabled. So they do not have to worry about meeting this measure. This will be automatically enabled for any person who is having a drug-to-drug or drug allergy, I mean, any person any provider who has enabled e-prescription within the BlueEHS system. So this will be automatically taken care of. This also will be automatically taken care of, except for this one clause, which I'll get back later. So now going on to the third objective, computerized provider order entry. So as far as computerized provider ordered entry is concerned, there are three parts to it. The first part being the medications, the second part being the lab orders, the third part being the radiology orders. Now, one of the things that I want to mention is there is an exclusion for all of these criteria. An EP who writes fewer than 100 medication orders during the EHR reporting period, which is very highly unlikely, can ask for an exclusion on this measure. Now, an EP who writes fewer than 100 laboratory orders, this can be is also exempted from the second measure, which is for the laboratory. Now, this is a possibility for certain kind of providers. They might have less than 100 laboratory orders. And an EP who writes fewer than 100 radiology orders during the EHR period also is exempted from the radiology measure. Now, this is very much, these two are very much, likely if you are not a practice who caters to that kind of patient who need a lot of laboratory and radiology orders. But this is a very highly unlikely exception that almost all providers do give more than 100 orders within a 3-month period. So, so you have the exemption if you are doing less than 100 of any of these medications, labs, or radiology. Now, as far as labs is concerned, as far as medication, which is the first measure in this, how you're going to meet is what I'm going to show you. In the BlueEHS system, I'm going to go into the BlueEHS system right now. In the BlueEHS system, I'm going to take a patient and I'm going to go into the patient. As long as you are doing the entry of the patient's medication. Now, this is the alert that I was talking about. This is the alert based on the clinical decision support rule that is coming. This alert is enabled as far as this system is concerned. As long as this is enabled, it is more than fair enough. Now, going back to our CPOE medications, you can go into the ERX module. And within the ERX module in the Med Entry tab, as long as you are entering medications, current medications of a patient in this in this area, you necessarily do not have to e-prescribe. As long as you are entering it into the Med Entry area, manually entering, suppose a patient is taking a drug, you just have to search a drug and just add that drug as a part of current meds of the patient. Now, as long as this is getting moved here into the current medication, I just did this at this moment of time, aspartic acid 600 mg capsule. Now, as long as you are moving to the current medications, a drug into the current medication, the drugs of the patient, you need to do that for 60% of the medications that is being prescribed by a provider. So if a provider prescribes 500 medications during the period, at least 300 of them need to be recorded in this format in the med entry area of the EMR. As long as you are doing this in a structured manner in the med entry area, this criteria will be met, the CPOE medications. So that is a first. CPOE medications, at least 60% of the patients need to be entered from the med entry. 60% of the medications of all the patients that you see in a reporting period need to be entered using the structured entry in the med entry area. That is the medications one. The second one was the laboratory one. At least 30% of the lab orders, if you do more than 100 lab orders in the reporting period, at least 30% of the lab orders need to be recorded in a structured manner. Now, as far as the lab is concerned, every patient, if you go into the patient's encounter, so I'm going into the encounter of this patient. In the patient encounter, there is in the assessment area, we have the procedure order option. Now, in the procedure order option, you can, you can choose yourself as a provider, whether if it is a lab. And now, in the sending to area, there will be all the labs, either external or internal, that are listed here. So if you are not if you are integrated to an external lab, you can send the lab orders to the external lab by choosing the lab order, and from here you can choose the procedure name and click on save, and it gets sent. Now, if you do not have a external lab, you can, just for the sake of meeting this criteria, you can create an internal lab. Now, how you create an internal lab, I will mention at a later point of time. You can create your own internal lab, and you can keep recording your orders. Suppose you want to order a test. So I'm just going to urine test. Now, I just put the urine test. I do not have to necessarily put a diagnosis. If I do want to put, I can search for a diagnosis, which will pull up diagnosis. I can put it, and and just save it. So you have recorded for patient John Doe on 9th, you have done a urine test. You can record it in an internal lab. Now, how do I create an internal lab? Is something I'll show you. And this test, the test that you create, how do I create a test, is also something that I will show you at a later point of time. So just by choosing a urine test and saving it, this gets recorded as a order for this particular patient. So for each of the encounters that you create for various patients, at least 30% of the lab orders that you do from your clinic, or as a doctor, if you do 1,000 lab orders, at least 300 of them you need to record it this way. I'll just, the way I mentioned it. If you have external labs, you can always have them listed here. If you do not have external lab integrated, you create an internal lab, create a set of procedures under the internal lab, and keep ordering it, keep saving it, so that you have that is recorded as a CPOE, or a computerized provider order entry. Okay. Now, if instead of a lab you have radiology, you have a radiology option here, internal radiology. You just do this, and as far as the radiology is concerned, it is a direct result because there is no, it is an image that is uploaded. So when it's a radiology, make sure you check direct result and X-ray for chest. You add it and save it. This will make sure that if you choose internal radiology and save it, this will make sure that you have, that order is also recorded. So you have to record in the procedure order tab within the forms. You have to order the labs from within this area to keep it recorded as a computerized provider order entry. Now let me just show you how to add an internal lab and how to add an internal radiology lab within the system, and how you can add tests within the system. So I'm going to take another bullet on the screen. I'm just going to go into this, and I'm going to take this lab module. Now, one of the things that I want to mention is when you go into the lab module, you have various segments here. You won't see all that when you are in the patient's encounter. You will see only the ordering area and the result area as far as that patient is concerned. But this is a more generic lab screen that you will see here. So here in the providers section, you can click on the providers. Here is where you add a new lab. So you can click on new, and if you are adding a new lab, say internal lab, you just put in the name, and I'm just putting internal lab new. I'm going to just save it. So this becomes an internal lab new. An additional lab has been added. And if I want to add a radiology order, radiology lab, I'm going to lab internal radiology new. I'm going to make it as radiology here in the protocol and save it. So you can see if I add labs, it will be listed here. Now, if I want to add a test under internal lab new, I can go and hover over this full compendium and select procedure configuration. And I can add a test. I can click on add. Under the orders, I'm going to add a test called, in the lab, I'm going to test blood test. Okay. And I'm going to give the name 1, 2 as a procedure code for blood test, and I'm going to select which lab. So I'm going to add it under internal lab new. So internal lab new has a blood test under order. You put blood test is the name of the test, and procedure code is 2, and it is called it is under internal lab new, and I'm going to save it. So that becomes a part of the number of tests that is under the procedure configuration. If I go into the last page, I'll definitely see what I just added, blood test order. And I'm going to add one for internal lab radiology also. For that, you have to choose this one. And I will MRI. I'm going to put an MRI scan here. And I'm going to put the procedure configuration code as 3. And I'm going to save it. It's all under order. I have to choose the lab and what is the code, any code that you would like to give as far as an internal lab is concerned. So that also gets added here. So now if I go back into the encounter, I'm just going to refresh this encounter by clicking on the encounter number, going into the assessment area, into the procedure order or the procedure order form. I can see that there are 4 labs available. If I choose this lab and I'm going to search for the procedures under it, it should bring up internal lab new. If you remember, I had added blood test. You see blood test has come here. I can choose that and save it. So you can create your own tests there and just keep recording it, and it will be calculated for meaningful use. And as far as radiology is concerned, you can use radiology, and I put it. Remember, I had chosen MRI scan. So whatever procedures I add under a particular lab will be coming here. And as far as the radiology order is concerned, I have to keep it as a direct result and then save it. This will calculate this will make sure that this particular order is recorded. So if you are doing 1,000 orders in a year, lab orders and radiology orders, at least 300 of them you have to measure through this. You have to put in through this place. Now, if one of the things, if you are not doing a computerized provider order entry, you can record the lab of a patient by, there is a folder here in the document section, from where if you are not adding it through the computerized provider order entry, you have to add through this. In this place, you can browse and upload an image for a lab order. So that also gets counted as a lab test. Similarly, if it is a radiology order, you can add under this DICOM folder, you can browse and upload. It will also get calculated as a radiology order, but only thing is it will not be counted as a computerized provider order entry. So no matter how many labs you do, each of the lab you have to either do as a computerized provider order entry, or you can upload it here. Now this once uploaded here, won't be calculated as a computerized provider order entry. So that's how it is. So one of the things to upload lab orders, you don't have to necessarily go in here. We have a widget. If you go into the, I'm just going into the widget section, and I'm just going to add a widget called document uploader into the my widgets area. So now if I go back into the patient's demographic screen, the widget uploader will be available here. So if I have a lab order, I can just browse and upload from here. If I have a DICOM or a radiology order, I can just browse and upload from here. I don't have to necessarily go into the document section. So you have to, if you are not doing a computer provider order entry, you have to enter it through this area by in a document format by scanning something in the lab order in, or else you can do the computer provider order entry. But at least for 30%, you have to do computer provider order entry for the labs and the radiology, provided you are doing at least 100 of these. Otherwise, you do not have to. You are exempted or excluded from it. Just going back into the screen. So I hope this one is clear. This one, the computer provider order entry, as far as medication is concerned, you need to do through med entry. This needs to be done. The lab needs to be done using the lab module, the procedure order form, and this also you need to be done in the procedure order form. Now, for the fourth one, this one is in the, you need to do at least 50% of the prescription that you send should be electronically prescribed. So you have to have e-prescription in your system, and 50% needs to be electronically prescribed. And there is another thing, 50% needs to be transmitted electronically, as well as 50% need to be queried for a drug formulary. Now, this one you do not have to worry about. If you are using the new crop module, it automatically satisfies this one. So no need to worry of that one, but transmitted electronically. So if you are transmitting 100 medications, if you have ordering 100 medications, you have to make sure that 50 of them are electronically prescribed to a pharmacy. And our system does check that, and based on the kind of prescription that you make, you cannot do it through compose a med entry. You have to compose the medication and transmit it to a pharmacy electronically to meet this, and you need to do that for 50% of the patients in the system. Unless you do that, it won't meet this measure. So you have to use the new crop module to electronically prescribe for 50% of the patients. Now, going on to the fifth one, this is health information exchange. This is for patients who have, this is for patients who are going outbound patients, or the patients you are referring outside your practice. If you are referring a patient outside your practice, you have to do this particular criteria. Out of first one that you have to do for this outbound patient is use CHRT to create a summary of care record. Now, as far as we are concerned, this one is met because our CHRT or the EHR or the EHS creates summary of care record. As long as it creates and has the ability to create, which it has, the BlueEHS meets that criteria. But the second one is the challenging part. Electronically transmit such summary to a receiving provider for more than 10% of transition of care and referrals. So if you are referring 150 patients to some other practice during the EHR reporting period, you need to make sure that at least 15 of them you send the summary of care record to them electronically. Now, this is the difficult part, you can say, of this particular measure how do you send it electronically. Now there is something called as female ID. Female ID is something you can register on the EMR Direct website. You can go and Google EMR Direct, and go into the website and get yourself a female ID. Now, the female ID, it is just like an email ID. Only thing is this is a HIPAA compliant email ID that a doctor receives. Each provider can get one for himself. And once you have that, you and you get the female ID of the other provider also to whom you are planning to send the transition of care patient, you can communicate just like an email. You can put in there the other doctor's female ID and then go ahead and send him the summary of care of this particular patient. Now I'm going to show you in the system where you can possibly do that. So let me just go into the EHS. So if I'm in an encounter of a patient, so I'm in John Doe's encounter. So you have the option to, share. So you can click on the share button. Now in the share button, you have the EMR Direct option. So if it is a transition of care patient, you have to make sure that this particular checkbox is checked. A patient, when I say transition of care patient, if it is a patient, outbound patient, where you are referring that patient to some other place, some other area, some other doctor, you have to make sure that this checkbox is checked. If it is checked and you have the female ID of the other doctor, suppose the female ID is XYZ at abc.com, you can just type in just like you XYZ at abc.com. Now, if this is not something that is already recorded, you can add this doctor to at the address book of the system, ABC, and the direct address is XYZ at abc.com. So if it is a new address that you have, once you add it, it becomes a part of this drop down. Once you type it in, you just select it and it becomes a to address. You can close it. Now the next time you type XYZ, it becomes a part. And then you have, if you want to give a reason, I'm sending this patient for ABC reasons. And I can click on send, and that will make sure that this gets counted as a patient for whom you have sent an electronic referral outside. So you need to do this for 10% of the patients to whom you are referring outside. If you have 100 patients, at least for 10 patients, you need to do this. You need to find their other provider's direct address and send it to them. And one of the things you have to do as such is you have to have your own direct address to be able to do this. And once you have your direct address, if you contact us, we will help you in setting up that direct address within the BlueEHS system that you have, so that the to address is your address whenever you send it from your EHS. So that's the main thing. So once you have your direct address of your own, please contact our support. We can always set it up for you in that database, and then you find out the other providers' direct address, and using that you can keep sending referrals. You have to make sure that you check this checkbox showing that this is an outbound referral, and you have to send this for 10% of the patients. You have to click send, and it will just satisfy. Now the direct messaging is currently unavailable because this is an address that is not there. It's not a relevant address. So just wanted to mention this. This is the share button from where you do what I just mentioned. So that is the fifth one. So I'll just go back into my document. So 10% of the patient needs that. Now, The sixth one is patient-specific education. At least 10% of the patients need to be given patient-specific education material. This is what. Now, one thing that we can suggest is you can print out your own patient-specific education material and keep it on your table at your practice and give it away for each patient. Only thing that you have to do within the system is you have to mark whether you have given the patient-specific education resources to the patient or not. Now, how and where you do it is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to go back into the BlueEHS system. So within a patient encounter, I go into the encounter, you have something called as the encounter summary. In the encounter summary area, you have a button. Now, in the EMR, the encounter summary may be found here. Sometimes it is found here. So you, based on where it is, this pop-up will come, and you have to, once you provide an educational resource to a patient, you have to make sure that this particular checkbox is checked to calculate the numerator, or calculate the fact that this patient has been provided provided educational resources that are needed. This checkbox will make sure that you have recorded that fact within the system. One thing I want to mention is, along with the patient-specific education resources, this encounter should have an office visit code. So within the CPT section, which generally comes under the plan in the CPT, there has to be a office visit code like 99211, 912. Any of these will be valid. So an office visit code is needed for that encounter in which you mentioned that patient-specific education resources has been provided, for it to be valid, because unless there is an office visit code there, uh, it doesn't show that this is a patient has actually visited the clinic. So the office visit code is required, and once an office visit code is there, you have to make sure that this particular checkbox is checked, so that the fact that you have given it away, even manually or in some other way, is recorded within the system. That is the sixth one. Now going on to the next one, I'm going to go back to the document. Medical reconciliation. So the seventh one is, whenever the patient is an inbound patient, a patient that is coming into your practice. On the fifth one, I had mentioned it's as an outbound patient. This is for a scenario of an inbound patient where somebody is being referred to your practice. So in that case, you need to do medical reconciliation for these patients. So if 100 patients are referred to you, you need to do that for at least 50% of the patient. That is at least 50 of the patients you need to do. Now, how the medical reconciliation is done is up to you. Medical reconciliation is a process whereby you look at the patient's past medication, current medication. You just reconcile it in such a way that you reconcile everything and you provide the optimum medication for the patient. That is the process of medical reconciliation in short. So once you have done that medical reconciliation, how you record it within the system is what I would like to show you. I'm going to once again go into the BlueEHS. And once you are in the BlueEHS, again, it is again in the encounter summary. I'm going to go into the encounter summary. Once you have done the medication reconciliation, you have to check this checkbox, medication reconciliation performed. This checkbox need to be checked for it to be recorded. So for each patient for whom you have done medication reconciliation who are inbound patients, make sure that this is checked. That is the seventh one. So going back to my document. The eighth one is related to giving patient portal credentials. So 50% of the patients that are in the BlueEHS needs to be given patient portal credentials. So how do you give patient portal credentials is the first question. So I'm going to go back into the BlueEHS just to show you. So as far as John Doe is concerned, the first thing when you give a patient portal credential is you have to go and edit their profile and make sure that in the choices section, the allow patient portal is yes. If allow patient portal is yes, you can give their contact email ID if they have one. If you give their contact email ID, the good thing is the credentials will automatically be emailed to their uh, email ID. If it is not, if they do not have an email ID, also it is fine. But allow patient portal need to be made yes within 4 working days, 4 days of the patient's encounter. Within 4 days, this has to be made yes. And once that is made yes, to provide the patient with credential, you can just click on portal credential, and you can. This will be the username. This will be the password. Just save it, and that will make sure that an email goes. If you want to print it, you can just print it out and just print this portal credential for them, and then thereafter go in and save it. That that's what you can do. So once this is printed, portal credential for John Doe. Now John Doe can easily go in and log into the My Docs portal using this link. They can go into this link, and using this username and password, he can log into it. He just needs to use this link and the username and password, and probably the facility ID or the facility that he is basically. But for meeting the criteria as far as a provider is concerned, they just need to give this portal credentials. Now, going on to the next one. And just going back into the document. Now, once we have given 50% the access to this, there is another thing that is there. One patient, at least one patient seen by the EP during the period needs to log into the patient portal. So one of the suggestions that I give is, if there are any staff in your clinic who are also a patient in your clinic, just ask them to log in and view their record within the system. So if you make them view their record or download or transmit, basically just viewing for one of the patients will work as far as the patient portal is concerned. They have to log into the patient portal, which is the My Docs portal with the credentials that I showed you earlier. If they log in, that will work. So one patient has to log in and view their data, which they can do by clicking on My Providers within the patient portal. So that's it. So the two are 50% needs to be given credentials, and one patient needs to log in and view. And secure messaging, the ninth objective, we have enabled free messaging from the patient portal to the provider and vice versa. As long as this is enabled, this measure is met. So you do not have to do anything for this. As far as BlueEHS is concerned, it is already met. And the 10th measure is public health reporting. Now, as far as the public health reporting is concerned, there are 3 criteria, out of which 2 measures has to be met for meaningful use stage 2. If you are a stage 1 provider, you just have to do one of these 3. So the first one is immunization registry. Now, first thing that you have to find out for all these 3 things is whether there is an immunization registry or a syndromic surveillance registry or any other registry in your area that accepts data electronically. If there is any of these kind of registries, you have to make sure that you register with them, one. And once you register with them, you can also ask them what sort of data they need, and they will give you an advice on as to what sort of data they are collecting, and accordingly you can provide immunization data or syndromic surveillance data or any other data from within the BlueEHS system. Now, how do you do that? From where do you get that kind of a report? You can get that. I'll just go into the BlueEHS system just to show you. So in this, you have, in the main menu, you have something called as care coordination. Under the care coordination, in the immunization tab, you can search for any CVX code from various date and do a search, and that will give you a report which can be sent to any of these immunization registries. Similarly, syndromic surveillance data you can search for any of the diagnosis code here and send data. So as far as specialized registry is concerned, it is just another diagnosis code. You can always send. If there is any other specialized registry, you can send it by pulling a report from this. Now, how you create this, how you make a diagnosis come here, there are only two options here. How you make a diagnosis come here as an option is you go into another bullet. I'm just going into another bullet, going into this sub menu, and in that you have this code types. In the code types, any code can be made to come there by using this. So I'm just going to do a ICD-10 diagnosis search. So if I want to add, say, A01.03, I just check this, check on diagnosis reporting and update it. Once I have updated it, if I go back here and I'm just going to refresh this and go into the syndromic surveillance area, I'll get a third code for searching. If you look at it, you see the code that I just added is also part of this. So you can add any of these reporting codes here and do a search and send it to any of these registries that you need. So only thing you have to do a research from your end as to what registries is your local registry, whether they do accept electronic data. If they do not, you can apply for an exemption. If they do, then you have to ask them what sort of data you need, and you can pull it from here, and how they need it, you can send it to them. So that's with the 10th one. So I'm just going to go back into our document. So this is just about it. So two out of these three, you have to choose any two out of these three. And out of that, one of the things is, if there is in your jurisdiction, if there is no registry that accepts data, you can always ask for an exemption on this. So these are the 10 meaningful use criteria and how they are to be met in the system. The next thing that I would like to touch upon is the dashboard, how you can monitor how you're doing with each of these measures. So I'm going to go into the BlueEHS system just to quickly show you the dashboard. I'm going to So if you go into the main menu, you have something called as under reports, you have something called as MU2 report. You can go into that MU2 report and you can put the date, say October 1st to present date, and choose the provider, say you are Shazad Hashim, and I do a search. It will give you how you're doing on each of these measures. So you have the denominator. Some of them are automatically activated, so you don't have to bother about that. As long as you are using the BlueEHS, you are fine with that. But others, you will see you have ordered 6 labs, out of which 1 you have done electronically using CPOE. So this is the 30% that you need to meet, but you are 100% on this one, but you are only 16% on this one. You know how you're doing on each of these measures by looking into this. So this is what you need to do as far as the system is concerned. You need to look at how you're doing, monitor how you're doing, make sure you're all in green as far as these are concerned. This is the dashboard from where you can monitor your performance as far as BlueEHS is concerned. Again, in the main menu under MU2 report. Now, finally, what I want to talk about is the clinical quality measures. I'm just going to give you an overview. Other than these 10 measures, there is also a need for a provider to choose 9 clinical quality measures that they are going to report on. Now, as far as clinical quality measures is concerned, one thing I want to mention is there is no cutoff percentage for it. As long as you are reporting it, it is fine. So, so there are. I'm going to take a document which shows you the clinical quality uh, measures. So this is the clinical quality measure document that you have. There are 6 domains of the clinical quality measures. As a provider, you need to choose 9 clinical quality measures. And out of the 9 clinical quality measures, uh, it has to be made sure that at least 3 domains are chosen. When you are choosing the 9, you have to make sure that at least 3 domains are chosen. Now I'm going to scroll down. Each clinical quality measure has an NQF number, and what is the you can know what is the domain to which it belongs. Now, uh, so just a moment. Yeah. So if you look at it in this document itself, you have the measure title here as well as which domain it belongs. So you have to choose 9 from this whole list that is given. Choose 9, and out of those 9, you have to make sure that it is at least from 3 different domains. It might you can do it from 7 from one domain and 2 from different domains, 1 each from 2 other domains, or you can do 3 3 3 or any other combination as long as it has 3 different domains. Now, just going back into the EHS to show you how to monitor the clinical quality measures. Uh, so if you look at the report, you have this area, you have the CQM report here. So you just take the begin date, just like the MU dashboard, you can see how you're doing on the clinical quality measures by clicking on show report, and it will. So there is no patients in this demo site. That's why this, we have created for around 15 different criteria that is available, that is on that document that we saw. There are around 15 CQMs for which we have created a dashboard. If you have any other, if you choose something outside this, we can always add it. If you make a request to us, we can add it to this CQM report so that you can view how you are doing on it. Basically, all you need is a denominator. As you have patients with any of these domains, you will have the denominator. This percentage is not a problem. Now, as far as now going back into my MU criteria, if you remember, there was, I'll just go back into the document for a moment. MU document. Now, in this, one of the measures, which was the second measure, I said 5 clinical decision support rules needs to be added, and out of which 4 or more has to be related to the CQMs. Now, how do you do that? Now, the clinical, I'm just going back to the EHS. Now, these are the clinical quality. So you might be doing 9 of these. So out of these 9, 4 of the ones that are there in this has to be related to the CQMs that you choose to do. So to do that, we'll have to create a rule in the CDR engine, which is at least 4 of them out of the 5 that is here. There are 17 here. Out of the 5 that you want as a clinical decision support rule that should help you in clinical decisions, that has to be related to some of the CQMs that you do. So if you have, again, we can always assist you if you choose CQMs that are not there in the system. We can always assist you in adding these clinical decision support rules in the CDR engine. Do communicate us to our support team. We can always enhance the CDR engine and the CQM report for your liking. So in a nutshell, this is what the MU stage 2 is all about. You have 10 measures to meet, as well as the various CQMs to do. Now, as far as the CQM is concerned, you do not have a cutoff. Basically, what matters is how you select your CQMs. I showed you the document from where you can select your CQMs. You can, if you need any assistance with these documents, please, you can always email me at SamTK, SAM, T for Tom, K for Kite, SamTK @zhservices.com. Z for zebra, H for hotel, zhservices.com. I will be always happy to help you. Thank you very much for tuning into this session. Hope you have had a good time of learning. We'll see you soon for another session, most likely in the coming days. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.